Sometimes we get so stuck in the pattern that has previously happened, we can't actually be present in what is happening.
I think making easy choices for yourself and your horse, like you don't have to do the hard thing every day all the time.
This podcast is brought to you by Equilibrium Products and Redwings Horse Sanctuary.
Happy Wednesday!
Happy Wednesday, Rhi. How's it going? Welcome back. Season 2. Ding ding.
Whoop whoop. We missed you guys last week.
I think you missed us.
It was quite cute actually. We got a few messages.
Yeah, I had lots of messages as well saying like, oh, I don't know what to do with myself. It's Wednesday and we don't have a podcast to listen to. I love that we have become that. That's such a cool thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really cool. As you would have seen from the top of this podcast, we have 2 new joint sponsors for the season, which Miri and I are so excited about. Redwings and Equilibrium Products. No, not Equilibrium. You just corrected me before we started this. It's Equilibrium.
Because it's equine.
Yeah.
We're very grateful to have the support of both of those companies, but we're really excited because we're going to get to go and visit the Redwings Sanctuary and we're going to get to meet the donkeys. If you guys don't, you must go and follow Redwings on social media. I don't know who the person is who runs their social media, but they've got a really good sense of humour. Now, obviously,
Hilarious.
Redwings are doing an amazing thing. They're a wonderful charity. That's why we are working together with them with our meaningful podcast. But they do some very funny videos of like the donkeys singing and stuff, and it's definitely worth a follow. So please do go over and support their social media, which is another reason why they will have sponsored us, because then we are giving them some humans back to support them. That wasn't very good English. How have you been? We've had a bit of a gap, so how are things? How you been doing?
It's been good. Been really loving the start of spring. I was riding out with a friend today and it was just warm and it was nice, and we went on this road, on this hack that we know we see the bluebells on, and so we were like looking at the bluebells, and my friend is really good at like knowing flowers, and so she's pointing out all these flowers as we were riding, which is very wholesome and cute.
Oh, love that.
I know. And Harley and I are preparing for our first camp ever.
Keep
Never
going.
taken my own horse to a camp before overnight.
Really
I'm
cool.
really excited.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing to do, and I think that's a really good like milestone, right, for you?
Yeah. Feels like last year we were sort of building up to it. Like we went to Melissa Beer, who's a dressage rider, does these day camps. So you go and you have a stable for the day, and then you do a couple of things. And I remember, I said this on my Instagram today, I remember someone at the time commented and was like, it's not a camp if you're not there overnight. And I just remember thinking like, what a weird way to try and steal someone's joy. That's really weird.
What an unnecessary thing to say. That happens a lot on the internet, doesn't it? You think, really? Did you need to say that? Just could have been that. Could have been an internal thought, couldn't it? Not an external thought. Oh, well, that's really exciting.
But yeah, camp is at Hickstead,
Oh, fun. Okay.
which feels big and exciting, and we're gonna do a bit of everything, bit of jumping, bit of dressage. You can hack around, and it'll be our first taste of cross country together too, because they have a little arena eventing bit, which I'm just very excited about. I'm feeling good about it.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's a really nice way to introduce cross country as well. We had a lot of questions actually, didn't we, about how to introduce things. We're going to have a young horse episode, so we will get to talking about that kind of stuff. But that is a really lovely way of introducing something, isn't it? Where you feel like it's like bridging the gap between show jumping and cross country, because you're still on a surface, so you've got the safety of the consistency of the footing while introducing some slightly more complicated fences, I guess.
Yeah.
Nice.
So stay tuned for the update. You were, as we dropped off not last week, at the end of season 1, you were going to give us an update on your day out with Zora. So how was that, and how's your week been?
So first of all, you can go and watch the episode on my YouTube channel. What am I talking about? I made a video and put it on YouTube. So when this goes live, it will be live. This will prompt me to actually post it because I've been dragging my toes a little with the last final bit. We had a very interesting outing. It wasn't like all amazing, super duper, had the best time ever. The warm-up it's very big, the warm-up at my local venue. It's like a kind of couple of arenas stuck together almost. And so you don't have very much like fence to support you. And she went in the arena, having been there lots and lots of times, and she just kind of felt a bit like an unexploded bomb, which was really interesting. And there were some other horses in the arena, and there was one particular horse in the arena that was really not having a very nice time. It was grinding its teeth a lot, swishing its tail a lot. The lady was evidently having quite a lot of trouble with it. And I mean, it was in a double bridle and she had enormous spurs on, so complicated in the sense of, the energetic side of it was really not very good, and I'm quite sensitive to that kind of thing, and so is Zora. And so any time that horse came within 10 metres, Zora was really like drawing up into herself and not feeling good. So the warm-up was hard. Thankfully, my friend was there who knows me really well and coaches me on a regular basis, Millie McBride. And she had been competing herself, and she just came over, and I just handed over a little bit of responsibility to her, and I was like, I'm having a bit of a hard time, can you give me what would you do? And so she just gave me a singular exercise that I went and I rode, and it was really helpful. And I think that just that moment of just like telling someone else, not feeling totally on my own with it, was really useful, because I was feeling a bit stuck, and so was Zora. Like, this energy was stuck and she was stuck, and it felt a bit and like things like a lady came out of the cafe with a pram, and Zora literally did like a capriole through the air, and she's like the goodest girl, like she doesn't have those kind of reactions. And for me it was really interesting, because it was very evident that the tension was a lot in her body, and then those things that normally she would be able to cope with, she wasn't able to cope with. And I think that's like that like overflowing jar of, bucket, stress bucket, whatever you want to call it, where, if they're in a little bit of low grade discomfort, that puts a bit of energy in the bucket, and then your saddle doesn't quite fit, that puts a bit of energy in the bucket, and then you go to a show and then the bucket is right at the lid of the top of the bucket, it's full, and then the lady walks out of the cafe with the pram, bucket overflows, horse jumps through the air. So for me, it was like, okay, how can I reduce some of the things in the bucket to bring that energy down? We went into our test, and I just had the mindset of like, I just want to have a nice time. Like, I just want to give her a clear round as such. And if I have to sacrifice marks in certain places, then I will. And it was interesting. So you go down the centre line and change the rein in medium trot. So it's quite intense straight away. It's an elementary, so there's a fair amount going on. You don't get much kind of respite between the movements. And she went 3/4 of the way across her change of rein. She started like violently shaking her head. And I was like, great. And then she was swishing her tail. So I don't know whether it was like the tension was just like built a bit. And I just kind of softened her neck and went round the corner. But then I had to suddenly leg yield. So then that was also very difficult. So like it was like a lot of things. But because of the intensity of the test, this has become quite the debrief, hasn't it? Because of the intensity of the test, it meant that it almost was like she needed to come into her body and with me to then move through it. So like you had to go leg yield, 10 metre circle, shoulder in. And by the time we got into the shoulder in, she was like, I'm with you. Like, okay, I've let go a little bit. I can hold myself better. And actually there was so much good stuff in the test. We got loads of 7s. We got some 6.5s. We got a 2. We got a 4. But then the rest of the test was also very good. So like there were lots of things that I was super proud of. And like we said before, why am I going to a show, right? What is I'm gaining? What am I trying to do? It's not the Olympics. Nobody's going to buy my horse afterwards. I'm not trying to, prove something. I'm just doing it because I want to prove that you can train horses in a holistic way and be competitive. You can train horses in a holistic way and have a nice time at a show. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be one or the other. And I really feel like actually, even though she was obviously having a bit of a hard time, it was really positive and got to a good place. So yeah, we got 63%. I mean, we've had better scores, obviously. The judge was really fair. I've had her lots of times. She is a tough lady. She used to decide sometimes that OB wasn't for her. So I've had her lots of times over. And yeah, I got a 2 in my leg yield, because when I put my leg on, Zora flicked her leg at me because she was like, oh, I feel a bit over my limit and I can't do it. So it was a really interesting learning experience. I'm going to go and do go to some more shows and try and go to some venues and like just train, not compete. Break the process down a little bit and go from there. So that's my debrief. Gosh, that was a lot. Sorry about that.
Love it.
I wanted to just mention a couple of things that you said about springtime, like being joyful and sunny. Like this is also mildly terrifying.
Oh God, Miri.
No?
What are you going to say?
Are you not scared? Are you not scared at the fact that it's so warm in March and April? Like, what? This isn't quite right.
From a planet point of view.
Like, global warming.
Mm.
Yeah. Climate change is a thing. Like, and I don't know, it just reminds me that we all need to be doing our bit, right? I don't want to be too doom and gloom about it, but it is a change. Like, we're going to have to be changing the way we do things. Feels like August. There are cracks in the ground. It's so dry. There were wildfires in Hertfordshire. I'm not exaggerating.
Really?
Yeah, not sparked by just the sunshine shining on the grass, by like somebody throwing a cigarette butt out their window, but the ground is so dry that there's actually, I mean, it's like the day after tomorrow. Sorry, doom and gloom. Stop me.
No, and no, I get it, and it is dry at the moment. We were actually, when we were riding, there's normally a couple of stretches on this lovely ride. It kind of goes around a golf course where we can have a little trot and canter, and it was so hard. We were just like, maybe not.
No. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it does cross my mind. It probably should cross my mind more. But sometimes you're like, and this is also a very bury your head in the sand approach, but sometimes you're like, I'm just going to enjoy the sunshine today because it's been a really hard week. But I agree with you. It's a good reminder.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a huge amount we can do about it, but it just, for me, as someone who's very conscious, I'm like, oh, this is a bit nerve-wracking. What does this mean? You know, what's the climate going to look like in an X amount of time? I don't know, just something I think about, and it's something I was thinking about. My anxiety's not been brilliant this week, so maybe that's why, because I'm just thinking about everything all the time. It's like that.
Yeah.
There's a meme on Instagram, and it's like, my brain is like a browser with 19 tabs open and there's music playing from somewhere, and that just feels very accurate at the moment. It's hard going.
Yeah, I hear that. Well, something you mentioned in your debrief of Zora, I think actually factors really well into what we want to talk about today. So when Miri and I were planning the different episode topics for this season, one of the questions that comes up a lot, certainly for me and I think for you as well, is around confidence and losses of confidence, in particular, not feeling confident in a particular scenario like hacking with a young horse, etc., or having had something happen that's really knocked your confidence. And you said something about Millie, your friend who was near the arena, and just giving her some responsibility. And I really liked that, because I think that's one of the ways in which when I look back at moments where I've had big confidence knocks, that's been one of the ways that I've helped bring my confidence back, along with other things. So that feels like a nice thing to touch on.
Yeah, definitely. I think that sharing it is such an important thing. Like, I found that a lot with my anxiety, actually. And I remember when I was younger, and I was really affected and I was really struggling with various different things, any time I would be brave enough to talk to someone about it, they would almost certainly always say, me too. And that is something I think in the horse world that doesn't happen maybe enough, is that we sometimes people will go, oh, I don't want to say because I don't want, people might not say the same or not like feel the same or whatever. But so often, I've had serious confidence knocks that we're going to, and I'll tell you a bit about them in this episode. I know you have, and I think it's so common. Even you speak to really top riders and they've had bad experiences or difficult horses or various things that have happened that have really made you reconsider how you do things, or really encouraged you to rebuild stuff. I remember when I bought a horse when I was 16, yeah, about then. And she was a grade A, and she was meant to be like this super confidence giving horse that was going to kind of show me the ropes, basically. And she was my one opportunity to kind of go and do it properly, in inverted commas. And it turns out that was just never going to be the case. She had lost all of her confidence because of being forced to do stuff. And looking back on it with my eyes that I have now, I think, well, yeah, I lost my confidence because she didn't have any, actually. And her confidence was, her way of doing things was just to do everything really, really fast. And actually, I think she was probably in pain. I think she was, I never found out what it was that was going on, because I ended up retiring her relatively soon after I bought her. Absolute waste, not waste of money, I don't know, but in the sense of she should never have been sold for the money she was sold for. And I lost my confidence because of that experience, because I felt like I was trying really hard, and no matter how consistent I was, whether I was learning or not, she was never ever, she wasn't able to reciprocate. And that was something that I wanted to mention about, and I made a note of, was that often when we feel unconfident on a horse, there is a possibility that it's because they are not feeling confident themselves. And we have to ask ourselves potentially why that is. And so, like, especially with young horses, often it's because they don't actually have the answer to the question that you're asking them. That's why you will feel that unsafe feeling. Or it might be because they're feeling not good in their body, like if they're in pain, essentially. And there was a quote that I really wanted to read. I have actually mentioned it before on here, but it's from a guy called Mark Rashid. He said it on a podcast. I'm going to read the whole thing because I think it's really relevant in this conversation. Horses are energy. When they don't feel good, they just want to move. But when horses don't feel good, we don't feel good, and then we don't want the horse to move. When we don't feel safe, the horse doesn't feel safe, and so we want them to stop. But all the horse wants to do is move. Why not just let them move and then give them some direction? And that, for me, felt really relevant, because if you get into that situation where that emotion spikes and you're like, huh, I feel not good, I feel really scared, the horse is tight, there's a spooky thing, or the energy has changed, or there's something negative happening, there's a big lorry or a bird, or something that is a trigger, we so often want to stand still. I've dealt with it with loads with clients. We want to stop everything from moving, but the reality is that the horse, flight animal, wants to get away from that thing. So it's trying to find a way of moving their body. We've talked about it before, haven't we? About moving Harley's body, like side to side, not just straight forward and straight line, to create that direction that Mark was talking about, so that the energy that has been created by this negative stimulus can move through the body and then leave again. Because this is one of the things I wrote down as well. I'm doing well here. I'm really spieling it all off. An emotion in a human only lasts 90 seconds. So when you feel that horrible anxiety zip you up, that's what it feels like for me, like something's gone up through my middle, like in it, and then it makes you like hold. If you don't like feed it by saying, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to die, oh my god, there's a tiger, this is all going to go wrong, I'm definitely going to fall off, all of those things are going to happen, all of my worst fears are about to culminate. If you just say, I feel that feeling, I'm going to breathe in through my nose, I'm going to feel that feeling, it's just a feeling in my body, it's a story my body is telling me, I'm going to start to let it go, it's starting to leave. Okay, I can start to feel a little different again. You'll be surprised if you can be brave and sit in the feeling, how quickly you can start to move it on, basically.
This is a great moment to thank one of our headline sponsors, Redwings Horse Sanctuary. I have been an ambassador for Redwings for some time now, and one of my favourite things that they offer in terms of ways that you can support them is to adopt a horse. This was always something that I dreamed of as a child, and I now have an adopted horse called Zippy. He was from Spindle Farm, if you remember that case, awful case, and he now lives at Adercold in Essex. He's 16 hands, he's a Gelderlander, and he is chestnut. And you can choose to adopt Zippy or any of the other lovely adoption stars that Redwings have for just £2 a month, or a one-off payment for just £15. And you can give these as a really lovely gift and a way to support the incredible work of Redwings. We are absolutely privileged and delighted to be their partners for this podcast. Thank you, Redwings. To learn more about Redwings and the work they do, follow the link in our description.
There's a couple of things there that I was really thinking about as you were talking that I think resonate certainly with my own experience, but also what I've seen from other people with their confidence. And one is that to your point around a horse not feeling confident, I've often seen when somebody has a confidence knocks, it becomes associated with that horse specifically. Yes. And the relationship with the horse has changed, the trust with the horse has changed, sometimes depending on what's happened. And then actually it's really hard if you're a one horse owner, because you're trying to work through this thing which is associated with your specific horse. And the other is this idea of like not maybe being able to trust yourself. Like if you're on your own, for example, I always feel better when I'm nervous if I've got a coach on the ground or a friend that I'm riding with. I think it is, to your point, something around just giving somebody else a bit of responsibility, even if that responsibility is just like, hey, if I get decked, will you just make sure that I'm alive?
Or even just having someone there that you can just say, I'm feeling really nervous. Even just, you know, what's the phrase? A problem shared is a problem halved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it makes such a difference. I want to touch on a big confidence knock I had, but just as a aside, I remember, I think I've talked about this phase that Harley went through like last September where he was just more challenging to ride. And I was schooling him on my own one day, and I was up at the kind of far end of the yard, so people aren't really passing by. And the only people that do pass by are, we have a mare's field like on the other side of the hedge, and there's like a cut back. When you've turned the mares out, you can cut back. And I was riding along and Harley was just like not feeling good, doing these little rears, like just not being quite sticky. And I was like, oof. And my friend was obviously seeing me riding and having a bit of trouble. And she just came, she didn't even say anything. She just walked across, came and stood in the corner of the arena. And I was like, thank you. I was like, can you just stay for like 5 or 10 minutes? Because in my head, I was like, I'm dealing with this. I need to figure out a way for us to move forward. But I'm afraid that if I push the wrong button, that I'm going to end up on the floor, or I'm going to end up in a dangerous situation. Because I hadn't known him that well at that time. I hadn't had him that long. And so even that is, I think, quite useful. But one I wanted to touch on was something that happened with Woody and kind of what I did after, because the knock that it had to my confidence went on for a really long time, and it still comes up now as like a bit of a shadow. So I hadn't had him very long, and I went out on a fun ride with my friend, and knowing what I know now about his body, like a lot of things become a bit clearer. But we were almost at the end of this fun ride, and we're like cantering through this field. And there was a statue of Hans. It's actually on my YouTube. It's one of my most watched YouTube videos, which sort of tells you everything you need to know about the internet. But it's a GoPro video. So I'm like cantering along, and he suddenly spooks away from this pair of hands. And because I was a bit of an idiot and I hadn't had him that long, I was like, no, come on, you like keep going. So I push him forward, and he's moving sideways, and he tripped over a path in the field that had been like rutted from where like a tractor had gone through, and then it had dried, and he properly stacked it, like went down, both knees kind of scrabbling, and it was like point of no return. Like I was off, and I fell off, and I hit the ground really hard. I got really winded. Woody didn't go anywhere. He was amazing. A couple of walkers like grabbed him. My friend was with me, and I remember I stood up and I was like, oh, that was so stupid. Like I shouldn't have done that. And I immediately knew that it was like a stupid decision. And it wasn't until I watched the GoPro footage back, actually, because I was like, oh, I'm going to get back on. Like we're not far from home. And my friends were like, they were like, I really don't think you should. Like, and I was like, everyone's overreacting. Like, you know what it's like in the horse world. Just get back on. When I watched the footage back, I was slurring my words, which I didn't know at the time. Wow. And I actually blacked out, which I didn't remember.
God.
I literally just fell down sideways. You can see it on the video. And it was only when I was editing that I was like, oh my God, I didn't realise that happened.
Wow.
So obviously
Concussion.
didn't get back on. Yeah, I know.
That's scary.
So anyway, after that, I think if you've ever had a horse fall out from underneath you, it is terrifying. Like there's just no feeling like that. Like I think if you've gone through your whole life without having a horse fall over underneath you, you just don't ever think that that's like possible. And then when it happens, it's terrifying. And I wasn't the bravest before that. So after that, I really struggled.
Remember, we're not trying to scare people on this podcast, Rhi. Just
no. I know, but you know,
I'm joking. We're just getting people to visualise their horses falling over underneath them. Like, well, so what happens is you feel like your stomach falls out, and then the neck.
Well, I think the point is that this doesn't happen that often, right?
No, like, it doesn't. So no, thankfully, they're pretty
and it shouldn't. And
beasts.
That's often the case with with confidence knocks. Is like this is stuff that isn't normal, like usually. And he had another fall in the exactly.
Yeah.
And he had another fall in the school over a pole, same thing, and it just completely wrecked my confidence. And I remember like being like, I'm really struggling with it because now I've lost trust in my horse's ability to stay upright, essentially. And how do I fix that? I can't fix his body and I can't fix my trust.
No, and
I
that's the
remember
interesting. Go on, keep going. I'll say something at the end. I just want to pick up on that because that's really relevant.
Well, I think for me, I found it hard, and two things I did started to make it easier. One was like, three things actually. I took the pressure off myself and was like, you don't have to go out cantering and pushing yourself and feeling like the way to solve this is to do it head on, quote unquote. And I remember I went home for the weekend to see Ollie and Matt, and he was like, I want you to come riding with me on my hunters at home, who are like big Irish drafts, super solid, like very polite, wonderful horses. And he was like, we're just going to go cantering. And I was so scared. We got to this field and he's like, we're going to canter. We need to get the pointer fit or whatever. And I kind of in the back of my head, I knew it wasn't the reason. I knew he was just taking me to take me. And we started trotting and then he pops up into canter and I distinctly remember saying to him, I can remember exactly where we were in the field. And I was like, Ollie. I was like, he's not going to fall over, is he? He's not going to fall over. I'm like, he's not going to back me off or anything. And Ollie was like, you'll be fine. He was like, if you want to sit, just sit. He was like, if you want to stand, hold the next strap, you're fine. He was like, nothing will happen. And I swear for the first like 2 fields, I just held my breath. Literally just held my breath. I was so scared. And then we actually ended up cantering for like 6 fields. Like it's the Cotswolds. It was amazing. And by the end I was like, oh, I can do this without like, but it was a different horse. And I think if you have the opportunity to go and sit on a different horse, that's one thing. And then the other, I think, is taking my time. And when I bought Harley, I remember saying to my coach, like, this is still like a bit of a shadow for me, this whole cantering thing. And we actually had a coaching session where she rode with me. And she does this quite a lot with us if we want to. We have a local venue that we can go to where you can go cantering and hacking and whatever. And she rode up sides with me and we went cantering together for the first time. She actually did it with Woody as well. So she was able to coach me from another horse and be in the environment that I found difficult. And to your point around giving someone the responsibility, there was something about riding with her that was like, nothing bad is going to happen while my coach is here. And like I trust her and my horse trusts her. And I mean, I think I feel much more confident now. Like I had a moment the other day where I took Harley cantering on my own for the first time in a proper open space. And we were like cantering along and he like spun round because he saw something. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to go out the side door. And then I was like, oh, I'm not. And I remember standing there and being like, oh, I'm fine. This is actually fine. And then we trotted and cantered again. And I just think that was a nice moment to be like, oh yeah, you're okay.
Yeah. Because something that I often get people to do is when you're in that moment where you feel like something is going to happen, but it's not actually happening, is I get people to imagine that they are like a bird flying above themselves, looking onto the circumstance that they're in. Because sometimes we get so stuck in the pattern that has previously happened, we can't actually be present in what is happening. So by having a slightly kind of bird's eye view, literally, and imagining yourself looking down on the reality of the situation, what is actually happening? Because so often when we've had those bad experiences and we've practiced them a few times, like you did, a couple of different times over, they were very niche instances where he stumbled, and I want to get onto the, noticing those sort of things because that's important for avoiding having confident problems. But when you're riding out with Harley, if you were to be a bird and look down on what was going on, you'd be like, okay, well, he's bright and aware, he's not sort of stumbling regularly or really down on the forehand, he's kind of up and with me, and I can see that he and her are both very confidently, she looks tall and consistent in her seat, and even if he was to have a little trip, she doesn't look like she'd just kind of plop off the side sort of thing. So I think that's a really good exercise to do if you find yourself in that moment where you're like sensationalizing or getting a bit ahead of yourself, like, oh, this could happen or that could happen, because of course it's dangerous. We're riding horses, you can't ever completely negate the danger, like that's not a possibility, but we can check in with the reality of what is actually happening in that moment. I think that's really, really helpful. And
I really
I think
like that.
I use that a lot. a lot actually. And I've had it with clients where they've been like, oh, it's a bit of a light bulb moment, you know, because it's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And like you said, you know, you needed to go and keep doing those things in a small way to then realise, oh yeah, I'm fine.
But also, like, I think there's something about the bird's eye thing, maybe it's a segue. You don't have to force yourself to do, like, the hardest thing. And, like, a micro example of that is, I had a lesson this week and it was so bloody windy, like, incredibly windy. Harley finds that really difficult. There's a lawnmower going, there's pigeons flying out the hedge. And I'm like trying to keep...
It is death pigeon season. There's so many pigeons. Oh my God. And they're all doing that thing where they have a fight in a hedge.
Yeah.
And they're like... next to the arena. And you're like, please, could you go and have your whatever that is? Whether you're having sex, whether you're fighting. Is this a domestic? I don't know. But could you do it somewhere else, please? Because you're triggering my nervous system. Thank you. Goodbye, pigeons.
Honestly, it was triggering my nervous system. And
I want to carry a BB gun around, like, ding, pew them out the trees.
Miri.
Bloody. Sorry, I am actually a vegetarian. But
I was going to say that's probably the most un-Miri thing you've ever said. That's going to end up clips on some website. Miri Hackett, the truth revealed.
Like the Daily Mail. No, but I just mean a BB gun. I don't want to kill them. I just want to send them on their way. Go have your lovers spat somewhere else, please. I wonder what they're actually doing, the pigeons. Who knows? Carry on.
I don't know.
What a diversion. Sorry.
For avoiding the pigeons, I was trying to go large and just keep the same space. And my coach was like, just bring him down here, away from it. Like, let's make this easier. Let's make this simpler. Let's, like, not push him. And I think, like, I don't know why we always push ourselves to push our horses to the limit all the time. And, like, when I hack him out alone, I've been taking him on new routes this year to kind of, where I've been working really hard to get his confidence alone. He's not super, I mean, he will hack on his own, but he's not the most confident. He's great in company, so... you know, go figure, we're building confidence. And I took him out to a new route the other day. He was coping really well. And I got to the end of this path and I was like, if I go left, I'm home in 10 minutes. If I go right, he's got another 45 minutes of riding. And I was like, what do I do in this situation? And I really wanted to go right. I wanted to do the ride, but I was like, building blocks, babe. One step at a time. I was like, he's coping, but there's a little bit of tension. Let's make it easy. And I think making easy choices for yourself and your horse, like, you don't have to do the hard thing every day all the time.
No, because you're not also going to be feeling 100% your best all the time. And I think something like me and my nervous system, we're not really pals at the moment because I'm having a really rough time with it. So, like, I'm not about to go and do all the hard things right now. Like, for me, hard thing is going out for dinner, right? Really struggle with it. So for me, knowing how I feel, I'm not making plans to go and do something difficult. So why do we sometimes we do that with our horses. We're like, oh, we were doing this, so we should be doing that. Should, terrible word. Should is could with shame attached. I love that phrase. Jinx. Because it's such a valid thing. Like, oh, you should be doing this. You should be doing that. Said who? Said whose timeline? Said whose standard? Like, if you have a difficult time at work, a difficult time with your family, a difficult time with your health, your hormones, just you have a bad sleep, and you were like, I was planning to do X, Y, and Z today, but I'm actually feeling a bit shaky and I don't think it's the right thing to do. Go and interact with your horse, but bring the energy level down. Like, take the ask away. Like Hannah said to you, come away from the death pigeons. We don't need to trigger ourselves with something so difficult. Let's make it easy for us and have another positive experience. You have got a great phrase or a great kind of way of talking about this with a jar, right? Please tell us about your confidence jar, because I think this is such a nice analogy. Like, imagine the stress bucket, but positive. Take it away, Rhi, with the love jar.
My coach taught me this, the confidence jar, and it's this idea, and I love thinking in visual things, so it really works for me. And it's the idea that you and your horse have a jar of pennies, and every time you have a positive ride, you put a penny in the jar, or a couple of pennies in the jar, depending on how good the ride was, I guess.
Put a tenner in
up
it.
to you.
It's fantastic.
Put a tenner in it. Why not? Go nuts. But then if you have a bad ride, you might take a few coins out. If you have a fall, you take quite a few coins out. And the idea is that you never get to a place in your confidence jar where you're running on empty, or you're getting close to the bottom of your reserves, both in your rider's confidence and your horse's. And I think it can be really helpful, both for any like internal shame or kind of I guess shame that we feel about confidence, or like, why can't I get this? If you try and reframe it through the lens of like, I'm here to look after my horse's confidence, that is my job, then it suddenly takes that emotion out of it of like, why am I not able to do this thing? And I find that really helpful. So instead of going, oh, Harley was so anxious on that hack, like, why can't I just get a horse who's confident? Like, why am I not able to do this? And pushing us then to just go out hacking alone again and again, which is just taking points out the confidence jar. Instead, I might be like, okay, he did a hack on his own, he found that a bit difficult, I'm going to hack out with a friend that I know is really solid the next day. Put coins back in.
And for as long as you need to,
rides.
For as long as you need to, that's
exactly.
the key. Yeah, it's not like, oh, I did it once, so I fixed it. It's like, how long, try it again, see how you go. Like, being really aware.
And you can think about it in micro doses, like my coach being like, come away from the death pigeons. Like, we only did that for a few minutes, and then once we settled, we went large again. Like, it doesn't have to be these big changes, but I do love this idea of like protecting your horse's confidence, because I think it also gives you the confidence to push back on people who are maybe telling you that you should be pushing your horse down that road, they should go past the cows. You can be like,
you could do those things, but I don't want to. Yeah.
You're the banker, you've got the coins, honey, it's your jar, you get to choose how you spend them.
I think that's really, really valuable, because protecting your horse's confidence. I saw something this week, and it was like, if you imagined that you were given a car when you were born, and that car had to last you your whole life, think how well you would look after that car. They were talking about it in terms of your own body, like how well you would look after your own body. But when you think about that in your horse's perspective, like, how well can I look after my horse? Like, how many things can I care for? Now, I'm not talking about never doing anything. There are times where you want to actually building their confidence or doing slightly harder things is really important. Otherwise, we'd live a very small life. But it's like, how incremental can you make that so that it's not then a trauma? Because it's the trauma, the smashing of the confidence jar, the rebuilding it completely, which is the really hard thing. And when I talk to people a lot about like, having problems with horses, which I talk to people about a lot of the time, often we talk about like the break point and where they notice the problem. And the reality of the situation is, actually, it was so long before that the small things started to show, like the going hacking and them becoming a little bit more on edge, or they were a little bit edgy when I tacked them up, or they were they were a bit resistant when I went to catch them in the field. Those are your small things to notice. Okay, maybe I need to slow down a little bit. Maybe I don't need to keep up with Sharon on the yard. I need to... It's always Sharon. Poor Sharon. I hope your name's not Sharon if you're listening to this. If it is, I am sorry. But it's that, like, noticing it when it's little so that you don't have that big crash problem, essentially, I think is such an important thing. Yeah.
I totally resonate with that. And sometimes the way we remember stuff isn't accurate. Yeah. I had a hack on Harley where he properly exploded. We were like nearly home, and I think I put that up on the internet too. I probably did. He's like bucking and rearing down the road, completely beside himself. He'd been set off by a golf caddy on the other side of a hedge line. And it was not fun at all. I did not enjoy it. And I remember saying to my coach, it just really set him off. And I know he was a bit on edge, but it sort of came out of nowhere. And she was like, did it come out of nowhere? And I was like, I sort of thought back from the yard, and I thought, oh, actually, he'd reared up with me about 5 minutes earlier down the hill. And then before that, he'd been spooking along a hedge line. And before that, we'd met a car that and you're like,
okay. The stress
horses,
bucket was already pretty full, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's that, and I think a lot of confidence knocks comes from our emotional attachment to them. I mean, sometimes, you know, a fall is a fall and you're scared of getting hurt, and that is what it is. But I do find a little bit, for myself anyway, if you're quite an emotional person, like, confidence knocks and frustration come from your almost feeling like, not even disrespected, I don't know what the right word is, but like, instead of, say you're out, I don't know, doing cross-country schooling and your horse is stopping and you're like, oh, why are they stopping? Like, why can't we just do this, you know? Instead of feeling that, if you put yourself in the position of like, you're here to mentor your horse, which we talked about in the competition episode, like, I'm here to mentor, that's my job, I'm the coach, I have no emotional like alignment to this, like, I've got no skin in the game, I'm just here to be a teacher. Then suddenly that scenario can, instead of being like, oh my god, I'm so nervous, I'm going to fall off, like, why are we doing this, becomes, oh, that's interesting, I wonder what happened there for him that he didn't understand what I was asking there, like, let's make this smaller. And then you get rid of the shame of not being able to do something, and instead you're like, what can I do for my horse here, how can I build their jar? And,
Yeah,
you know,
because
it changes
the dynamic completely, doesn't it? Because otherwise you're there like, oh, why isn't this happening? It's like being like an impertinent child, like, oh, I can't believe this isn't happening, oh, why isn't this happening? Instead you're going, how can I help this to happen, right? And it's like,
and
being
also
a problem solver in that moment is so valuable.
And it's not easy. Like, I literally, in my lesson last week, I tried to do an exercise and I was like, missed the turn completely, basically. It was a tough exercise. And I was like, oh, this is so hard and it's such a tight turn. So, you know, we're not perfect all the time. But I do think if you can get used to switching into that mindset, suddenly it doesn't matter. Because actually, failure also changes. It's not failure if you're a mentor. It's just another day.
The other fantastic sponsor for this season is Equilibrium Products. If this is your first introduction to Equilibrium, I cannot say enough good things about them. They actually started out with the owner, Margaret Donnelly, had a 5-year-old who just began frantically head shaking during his ridden work. And so she designed something called the Net Relief Muzzle Net to help him. Since then, the company has gone from strength to strength, and their core message is making a difference to horses' lives, which feels very in line with the work that Miri and I do. Now, there are a couple of products that I really, really love, but in particular, their brushing boots to me are second to none. I've talked about them on season 1. They're super lightweight, but they offer incredible protection without heating the horse's legs, and they dry very, very quickly. So if you're not someone who has access to a washing machine like me and you need things to dry quickly, they're fantastic. The other thing that I really like about Equilibrium is that often their products are scientifically tested, so you don't just have to take their word for it, you know that they really are fantastic products. So if you're just browsing for the first time, I definitely recommend having a look at their horse boots, or if you're looking to spend a little bit more on your horse, the Heat Sense massage pad is something that I got the opportunity to try out about half a year ago. Harley absolutely loves it, and we now have it as part of our everyday routine. You'll learn more about Equilibrium as the season goes on, so stay tuned, and to learn more, visit the link in our show notes.
I think as well it's important to notice in these moments that we're not just talking about our horse's confidence, but in that moment, like when you're mentoring them, but you also have to mentor yourself.
Yes.
Like, you have to talk to yourself in that same way, because we are all learning, always. Like, every situation is different. You are riding a 4-legged mammal. It's forever changing. It's never going to be the same as it was the first time, the second time, whatever. The wind will be different. It's a different day of the year. You cannot make all the variables so the same that those things aren't going to be affecting the whole environment. And like, noticing how we feel ourselves before we go to do things is so important. Like, give yourself the care to count yourself in as an important part of the like the relationship and the success of that session. I've said it before about the 4 pillars, like, how do they feel, how do I feel, how do we feel, and how is the environment affecting us. And it's checking in with those things, because your horse could be going great guns and you're having a lovely time, but you're 2 days out from getting your period and you think that your head's going to fall off and your uterus is about to fall out your backside, and you're like, I do not feel my best self today. And although we were jumping 90 centimetre cross-country fences last week, I don't actually feel up to that. I've got this thing booked. I didn't know, a bit like we were talking about, you're not going to suddenly not do the thing because of your period, for example. This is just an example. But you maybe would consider, like, I'm not going to be feeling my 100% best today. I think about it a lot when I go to the gym. Like, I'm aware of myself when I go to the gym when it comes to that. Because we need to be supported too. Like, they need it and then we need it, and you can be that a little bit for yourself. Like, you step out of the emotion of it, like you said, and you just check in with the like what you're really going through in that moment. There was something that you said about like the same thing happening, like the feeling happening again. I think that's what I think. There was something that I heard you say, and I thought I want to tie into that. I had a really bad horse experience a few years back, 3 years ago now, where I had a young horse in to be backed, and backing young horses is a dangerous job, but I've been really lucky in that I got pretty good at it quite early on. And I got really good at reading when the horse was close to its limit. And so you get really, like, you feel how they feel. I think being an empath helps because it means that I basically absorb everyone else's emotions, which sometimes is really exhausting. But sometimes when you're training difficult horses, it can actually just be your savior because you feel what they feel, like their heart rate. I'll notice my heart rate spikes when their heart rate spikes, and that can keep you really safe because you see the problem occurring. We had this young horse and he was really big and he was really quiet. Like, he was like a lovely docile boy, and I had really missed something evidently in the training. Like, I had evidently really missed some major red flags, literally stabbing me in the eye, and I had thought, just carried on. And we got to the point of leaning over him, and a few times we had leant over him, and any time we turned left he would curl his back up, and he was a big guy, like he was like 17 hands and big, and he had lived quite a sheltered life. He'd like lived with just a couple of ponies, so he hadn't really had like normal inverted commas upbringing or very well rounded. And I think what basically it was is he was essentially an introvert, and I had just missed something. And anyway, I got on in the arena one day, we turned left and he really bronked, and he bronked me up into the air, and then I came off and he kicked me in the back when I was on the ground. Oof. And I was really hurt. I couldn't move my legs straight away. I remember lying on the floor. I'd got a video actually. I sent it to my friends, my friendship group. Oh, this is quite bad, guys. And for a very long time, my back was buggered. Like, it was really bad. I had to have a CT scan. No actual injury, just really bad bruising. I was like in bed for a week. I had to like crawl around my house. George had to like carry me to the bathroom. It was horrible. Turning left, when I took turning hind legs, so the process I go through when I back all the horses is the same. So you lean on, you move backwards first, and then you turn left or turn right, turning hind legs. So the groundwork pattern is the same. And every time I went to turn left, my body would, that zipping up anxiety feeling every single time. And I had to it's not the same horse. This is a different horse. This isn't the same experience. And still now, a few years later, I feel that same feeling because of that really bad experience, because our body learns the pattern. And that is the thing, when we're really struggling with our confidence or with, getting on is often a really common one for people. You get to the mounting block, there's like this build up, right, to the mounting block, tension arises, horse comes to the mounting block, tension's higher, gonna have to hold the reins, gonna have to, like this. And that was the same for me with leaning on a young horse and turning left. And it's taken a lot of redoing the exercise and then not being a negative experience to retrain my brain that is okay, because that is the story that my body learned in that time. And I think this is what we were saying, right? Like, the confidence jar is like, I've had to rebuild my own confidence jar. I've had to re-put pennies in that confidence jar. Mine is pretty niche, can't deny it. But if you feel like there is that one thing that is really hard for yourself, acknowledge it, see it, write it down, talk about it, say it is at that point that I feel that feeling, because in doing that you will then notice when it first comes, and you can say to yourself, I hear you, I see that feeling, like you're saying, you know, acknowledging the reality of that, and then can I now like be okay with it? You know, with the mounting block thing, like I did a post actually on Instagram this week about horses being anxious at the mounting block, but maybe there's one I should do about people being anxious at the mounting block, because you can do the same thing for yourself, right? You get to the mounting block, your body goes, oh my God, death. And you say, no death, here I am, get off the mounting block again, come back on, oh look, the same. Horse is there, pick up my reins, take a breath. And breathing is one of the things that is so valid. I mean, obviously, we would die. But breathing is something that we do involuntarily. You just breathe. You don't think about breathing until the fear arises. And then you realise that you need to start thinking about your breathing. I talk a lot about breathing on my ride-along podcasts. I have ride-along podcasts on my Patreon, and it's like a coach in your ear. You basically put me in your ear and you can listen to me talk you through a whole session. And one of the biggest things that I talk about, and not a lot at the beginning, is your breathing and like checking in with your body, because you can really let go of so much of that like previous story if you check in with your breath. And it's super powerful. Like I've had people send me messages and be like, because of your ride along podcast, I cantered for the first time in 4 years, because they got so trapped in that, like, I'm going to canter, because they weren't thinking about how their body felt or how their horse felt. They kind of lose the ability to do the hard thing, essentially.
Yeah. Well, breathing also factors into hacking, and I really wanted to touch on confidence out hacking because it's so common. It's the one I get asked about the most. And I wanted to kind of try and find... It's really difficult because every horse is slightly different out hacking, and your confidence knocks will be based on different things. But I wanted to share like a couple of things that I do when things are getting difficult, and then I kind of wanted to hear from you as well.
I really hope she's going to... Because you're going to talk about singing, and I love that you sing to Harley. It's my favourite.
I actually had forgotten about that. It wasn't going to be one of my points, but I will now. I do sing to Harley. But like,
was that lovely song that you sang to him about having Irish eyes? I was like, this is such a joyous moment. I
didn't even sing it right. I basically smushed 2 folk songs together because I just couldn't remember the real one. And anyway, it's by an artist called Rose Betts, called Irish Eyes. Great song. It's also on my Instagram.
It's either that or version. Taylor Swift, isn't it?
Love a bit Taylor. But yeah, I think there's sort of 2 pieces to this, which is like, for me anyway, when you're out hacking, sometimes it's you're out hacking and you know that you're on a horse who's a bit nervous, or you know that there's a tendency for something to go wrong, and then something goes wrong and it feels really quite dangerous or scary in that moment, and then you have to get back to the yard. And that's always that piece of sometimes you think, God, I'm miles away from home, I'm on my own, I'm now really stressed. And so there's been a couple of instances like that for me where something's happened and I've been a bit, either in myself I've gotten a bit nervous, or something's genuinely happened. And that's where I kind of wanted to touch on that. So like, there was one time recently where I was riding Harley on his own, and I'm again quite protective over how calm he is on his own because he gets nervous easily and anxious and whatever. And we're riding along this road, it's quite a busy road depending on the time of the day, and this dog comes from the edge of a garden and starts barking at Harley, which initially he was kind of like, oh, it's a dog that's barking, but that's okay. And then the dog starts running along the fence line, and that really set him off. So we're now cantering along the road sideways, coming up to a blind bend. So in my head I was like, oh, we'll have to bleep that out, sorry Amy. Oh goodness, cantering sideways, my horse is like not in complete control right now, I'm really worried that something's going to come around the corner, I'm really worried that dog is going to come out of the hedge. And so in that portion of the ride, I think the only thing that you can do is like try to get yourself out of danger as calmly as you can. So try and get away from the fence line, the barbed wire, whatever is around. Try and steer clear of a car. Try and like move your horse's energy, allow them, to your point, to move, but not in a way that's dangerous. Just let them. I think the more that you pull in that moment, the worse it's going to be.
Well, I
And
think
if they're
a very
rearing-
well-timed half halt is incredibly important.
Yes.
You know, like
Yeah.
you say not that, but let go. Not that,
Yes.
but let go. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. You know, if they're rearing up, hug around the neck, try not to pull back, things like that. So I think in those few seconds, you just kind of go into like preservation mode.
Survival.
But then
yeah.
immediately after, I think it's really important, if you can, to be like, okay, we've made it out of that danger zone now. I need to relax. And in that moment, I did that. I was like, okay, what can I do here? And I was like, I just did these big lion's breaths, like that, because I was quite stressed. And I got 2 of them in, and Harley goes, and I was like, oh my God, there it is.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was able to be like, okay, this is working. I'm going to keep doing deep breaths. And then I was like, are my hips relaxed? Am I gripping with my thighs? I was like,
Body
okay, how do I let go of that?
Yeah.
How much am I holding on with my reins? Like all those little check-ins. And then I sang after that, but mostly because I was happy to be alive.
So what you did was you somatically shifted the energetic from that dog. The energy came from the dog. You both absorbed the energy, and then you needed to let that go. And that is so powerful. I have hacking podcasts on my Patreon too. So if you're like, I need a guide, I will be your guide, and I will do that, what Rhi just said, but talk you through it essentially, because it's a scary thing. And I think something that I absolutely condone, and this is maybe a little off-piste, and it's definitely situation specific, but sometimes staying on your horse isn't the right thing to do. Like, if your horse is really spooking at something and they will not go in the direction that you need to go, and they're really, really having a very difficult time, if you can safely dismount and continue on foot and get back on maybe, or not maybe, I do condone that. I don't think you're not going to teach your horse, they've learnt now that they can get away with being spooky. No, their brains don't work like that. That isn't how their brains work. Like, they have just been helped in a very difficult situation. And I think giving people the permission to do what the horse needs in that moment is huge. And actually, one of my pieces of advice, if you have a horse that is mega spooky out hacking, is learn to hack from the floor. Get those walking boots on and off you go. Go in a bridle, that is the law. You really should be in a bridle if you are hacking in hand. But there are ways that you can help them, like positions you can be in. So if you imagine that you and your horse are walking next to each other, and there's some bin bags, you might need to be the leader. They'll follow you, but you walk in front. And then you get to a place where you can be next to them at their head. You're kind of level pegging. Then you're kind of like their guide with them. And then you get to a point actually where they can step out in front of you. And if you really go through that process, like I did that with Blondie for a really long time. Like, I got really good at walking out on a hack. She's now very different because she was given that confidence by me. So I think it's okay to have to be able to get off. And obviously in that circumstance with the dog and the energy, actually it would have been unsafe for you to have got off because you're cantering down a road. Like, that's not the right thing to do. But if potentially you felt like actually, staying on board wasn't good for both of you once that big energetic shift had taken place, I would absolutely say that you're okay to climb off, move his body a little bit in the groundwork, reset, and then walk the last however long home. That's okay. You can do that. You're not going to completely destroy your horse's ability to go for a hack by doing that.
It's okay to like try things out. Like, horses aren't robots, and like I took Harley cantering on his own, nearly came out the side door but didn't, carried on cantering. But that for him was quite like a exciting, maybe anxiety inducing moment. And as we were coming back down the bridleway, he's like quite up and he's like almost jogging. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I was like, tried my usual stuff, breathing. Am I gripping? No. Are my reins loose? Yes. And he just didn't, nothing changed. And I was like, okay. I was like, I'm going to try and maybe help him move some of this energy. So I was like, let me try a little trot. Trotted for a little bit, and sometimes that's what he needs. He just needs to like move his body a bit and then he's okay. Sometimes the trot isn't helpful and it makes it worse. you know? And so I remember like walking along and I was like, okay, and being okay with the fact that like you may not be able to influence them in that moment, but you're not going to add to it. And so I think that again comes back from being like, just act like a mentor, pretend you're one of your heroes. They would not find that stressful because they're like, this isn't about me. I'm not taking this on. I'm just going to let you settle. And then, you know, he came back to me like a bit later, but I think it's okay if you don't get an immediate reaction. I don't know if you agree with that, Miri. Maybe you don't.
I definitely do. I've had some horrible hacks. And you've got to just say to yourself afterwards, okay, that wasn't a failure, that was just feedback.
Yeah.
And like, where am I at? What's going on? You know, and
Yes.
there are times when repeating the same thing and expecting a different outcome is a positive, but then there are times where like just going to shows and doing nothing different isn't going to fix the terrible anxiety or the problem that you're having. Because that's more for horses than people, because sometimes if the horse is unaffected by the human and the human just needs to repeat the same thing in the same way, that's slightly different. But for horses, just doing the same thing and it being really stressful is not going to make that feel better.
Yeah.
So noticing what is the tricky thing and then doing that. So like for Zora and I with our show, I'm very aware that I need to go, and I'm going to go and make sure that maybe my friend Millie is there who coaches me, or my coach Claire or Ian or any of the people that I work with, and say to myself, okay, I want to go and I want to get to a point where the warm-up is really positive. So then we can work through the hard thing in the warm-up and then see how the test goes maybe. But like, I'm not going to just go and do the same thing and expect a different result. Isn't that the definition of stupidity? Isn't that what isn't that what Einstein said?
I think it's attributed to Einstein. I don't know if he actually said it, because I think a lot gets attributed to him, but it is a good phrase.
It is a great phrase.
Yeah.
So I think definitely like going back to what you were saying about the hacking, like it is okay if it doesn't go well. Like, it doesn't mean that it's always going to not go well, as long as you don't just keep doing the same thing. That's the key.
Yeah.
Don't bang your head against the same wall and not expect it to hurt. I don't know. I've gone with the phrases now.
I think, like, no matter what your confidence knock is about, I think trying to kind of testing the water for yourself and getting a bit of feedback for yourself, like, how do I make this easier? Let's say you really struggled when you go competing. It makes you really nervous. Okay, can you drop a level? Does that make a difference? Do you still feel really nervous? You still feel really nervous. Okay, can you get there much, much earlier? Does giving yourself more time make you nervous? It still makes you nervous. Okay, can you take the competition away and still go to the venue? Do you still feel nervous when you go to the venue? No? Okay, let's keep going to venues. Like, you will eventually find the thing that is triggering the confidence. Yeah. And if you can just make things easier, I think it starts to give you your coins back.
Yeah, and you've got to just sack your pride. Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. Like, you're not, most of the people listening to this podcast, you know, there doesn't need to be such an expectation or such a pressure on the situation. Like, remember why you're doing it, because you're a little girl that loved a horse once upon a time, you know? And I think that's so, like, forgotten. We get so ahead of ourselves. I used to all the time put so much pressure on myself. And then I was like, hang on a minute. This is fun. Like, this is meant to be, even if I was writing for a client, you know, you can only do your best, and just adding a load of pressure on it isn't going to make your best any better. I don't think, anyway. It's my opinion on that.
And if you don't work with a coach, I really recommend a coach on the ground. And if
100%.
you do work with a coach, like, depending on how long you've had a relationship with them, sometimes they can just tell when you're not feeling super confident. But with me, like, I tell them, like, if we're about to jump and I'm like, sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'm feeling a bit nervous, and it doesn't mean I stop, I'm still carrying on, but I'm like, I want you to have that information so that if this starts ticking in the wrong direction, I'm giving you the responsibility and the trust to, like, change what we're doing.
100%.
Yeah.
A problem shared is a problem halved.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, finding the right coach is super important. Like, I've had a lot of conversations with people, and they've said, like, I was working with this coach and then things started to get a bit difficult, and instead of scaling it back or noticing why or looking for the root or whatever, they just told me to keep getting on with it. And I don't know what to do. That doesn't really sit right. And I think you've got to be within your right to walk away from that situation, like, and be comfortable and confident enough to say, like, okay, I really don't align with this anymore. I'm just not going to book another lesson. Like, and that's fine. You've got to be able to, like you say, you're being the mentor for your horse. If you don't feel like they're being a mentor for you and your horse, it's totally acceptable to say, not for me anymore, thanks, but off I go.
It's such a balance too, because, like, you know, God, if I had my way, I'd like never put a jump up ever, because I just would never be in the frame of mind. But I'm really glad that I do jump with my coach, and I'm glad that she asked me to do some exercises in canter, and then turns out I can do them and I go and do them by myself. But so I think it's a balance between someone who understands how far to push you, because it's a sport at the end of the day. Sometimes if you're that way inclined, you do want to be pushed a little bit. You want to be pushed outside of your comfort zone, in that learning, growing zone, just not to the point where you're shattering confidence, you know.
That's really interesting that you said that actually, if given the choice, you maybe wouldn't jump. But then there are
not
times...
the choice. Like, I would jump, but like when I look at like heights and stuff, like I'd always go below a comfort level as opposed to pushing myself a bit. You know.
I think as well, like, if you, like, in giving you a little bit of let you off the hook there, you don't have to jump big jumps if you don't want to.
No, I know, but I do want to. And that's the thing. You know?
Maybe do a little writing on that one. That's interesting. That's a really interesting... Well, no, it's just very interesting to hear you say that. Like, I don't really want to, but I actually do want to. And there's there's something a bit pulling you, push-pull in that moment that maybe you can just sit with a little bit and try to understand.
Well, I have a massive fear of failure, Miri, because I hate to be wrong and imperfect. Even the other day... Even the other day, like, we were doing shallow loops and trot, and she was like, okay, come around and do it in canter. And I was like, in canter? She was like, yeah. And if I'd have been on my own, I'd have been like, no, I can't do it in canter, because I just won't be able to do it, and just something will go wrong. And of course it didn't go wrong, it was perfectly fine. And then I was able to do it on my own. And it's not just the horses, it's the same in the gym. Like, if Steph gives me a new exercise or something that looks hard, sometimes I'll be too scared to try because I don't want to fail.
That's really interesting, because I am the direct opposite of this. I absolutely am really good at failing. Like, I've been trying to learn this really difficult exercise in the gym, and you have to, like, put yourself, like, end up over the top of the bar. Like a bar muscle. It's called a bar muscle up. It's absolutely ludicrously difficult. And I'm like and I'm just completely comfortable with being absolutely terrible at it. And isn't that interesting? Like, maybe this comes from our parents. My parents were very, like, completely okay with me being bad at things and still doing them. And I think as a child, like, we just had a very, like, open policy of, like, falling over and being all right about it, you know, or not being good at something and still wanting to do it. And I wonder whether when we're kids, if we have a bit of a kind of, you know, a limiting moment. I'm not necessarily saying this is the case for you, Rhi, but, like, if somebody says, oh, you know, you've got to be good at something. If you're going to do something, you've got to be good at it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if I can blame my parents for this one, but I can certainly see that I was quite academic when I was younger, and therefore attributed worth to success.
Or results.
So even though we did try lots of things,
as well.
Yeah. Even in the gym the other day, I was trying to do box jumps. Haven't done box jumps in years, which is like where you, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you stand in front of a sort of box, like a softish box, and you jump up onto it from a standing position. And the instructions in my thing was just like, get as high as you can for a one box jump. And I was getting up to like 30 centimetres or whatever the measure is. Inches, and I had to take my headphones out because I was like, I can't jump this, and I literally had to be like, you can jump this and it's okay. And the first time I tried, my foot like slipped and I was like, oh, I failed, and then I was like, it's okay. I was like, you can jump this, you can totally jump this. But I really had to coach myself.
Yeah, but that's really interesting, because, like, I've been going to the gym with a friend of mine, and she jumps onto a box 1-2, like jumps up and then 1-2 with her feet, because she really finds jumping with both feet, like, really difficult. Whereas myself, absolutely never ever have I had a tiny grain of thought in my mind of like, you can't, I'd make it easier for myself maybe, but I wouldn't second guess myself or doubt that in that moment. And not because I'm like super able or really fit or whatever it might be, but my brain just isn't really wired in that way. Like I have a real kind of a confidence in myself, I guess, in that moment. This is really interesting. There's something really in this about this like doubt kind of feeling and needing to be pushed, whereas I'm quite good at pushing myself, maybe.
Well, I think this often actually, and maybe this is related to confidence, this is where people struggle, like when they're out hacking and their horse is spooking and they try something and it doesn't quite work, and then they're like, oh my god, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, maybe I'm not doing the right thing. We've talked about it before when I've tried to do groundwork on my own, and I'm so afraid that I'm going to teach Harley like the wrong shape or the wrong movement that I just don't do it. And I think that there is an element of confidence that comes from that, or you don't trust yourself.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with confidence around jumping as well. Sometimes you think you don't trust yourself to be confident, and so you end up in a cycle where the horse doesn't feel confident, and then you end up stopping, or whatever.
I
It's
think,
interesting, isn't
and
it?
that's where just making sure that you have the help, having enough help. If you're learning something new, don't expect to be okay to doing it on your own. Don't expect to be able to, because God, we all need coaching in every aspect of our lives, whether it be in growing up, you had coaching, you had teachers, you had parents, you had peers, you had elders, you had other people guiding you the whole way. Just because you're a grown up doesn't mean you don't need help. And if there is one thing you can invest in with your horse, it would be coaching. That is going to be the one thing that makes that thing so much more fun.
I love that.
I think that's
This has been great. I feel like we had a bit of a therapy moment there.
Yeah, but
we've solved it all, guys.
Yeah. Get yourself a coach and you'll be fine.
Very interesting. Yeah.
I had a quote I wanted to read out, and I didn't get to read it out at the beginning. And I've loved creating this community with this podcast, and this community that we have created together, I think is really magical. And I mean you, the listener, not just us. I mean you guys at home, because you guys reaching out and saying that Wednesday is your favorite day of the week, and that it's like sitting and having a cup of tea with us. There was a guy on Instagram, and he said, I want to be the person that in nursery you would hang your coat up next to. And at the end of the day, we are all just our inner children are often the people that we're talking to when we talk about our confidence or our feelings or our emotions, because they were the people that kind of experienced those things first. So if we can be those friends that you would want to come and hang your coat up next to, then welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, that's really cute. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I like that too.
Well,
made me cry.
Next week's podcast.
We didn't cry today. Look at us go.
We're evolving. Check us out. Maybe we'll cry on next week's podcast. Who knows? Next week we are going to talk about young horses, which will be really fun. I'm looking forward to that, because Miri has loads of experience with young horses, and I have one person's experience of a first young horse, which I think is quite interesting, ends of the spectrum.
Maybe we should ask each other some questions. We should be organised. Yeah. Or maybe if you guys have some questions about young horses and you would like to reach out and ask them, then please do.
Yeah, get them in our inbox before Friday, because that's when we record.
Yes. So if you're listening on Wednesday or Thursday, you're going to have a couple of days. Not a huge amount of time.
I was trying to do the maths. It's been a long week.
Thank you so much for listening, guys. It's lovely to be back. We are very much looking forward to recording all of season 2, and we will see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.